I'm Jack Hemingway with a Gardening Products Review, and today we're going to talk about sharpening pruners. Everything gets dull. Knives, machetes, pruning tools, loppers, all of those kinds of things. So eventually you're just going to have to sharpen them. A lot of questions that we get are, well, why would you want to sharpen them? Well, first of all, when you're making fine pruning cuts, you want to make sure that the material that you're cutting is not left ragged, because that affects the health and vigor of the plant, that's growing. You can see here, when you use a dull pair of pruners, it leaves an uncut piece there. Not to mention, it's very difficult to cut through at an angle. You can see that piece there with a dull pair of pruners. Now, on the contrary, these are nice and sharp. You can see that they make a beautiful cut. The other reason is you could take a pair of Felcos, which are this particular brand, a Swiss made, and you can actually buy replacement blades for these, but you're going to spend some money in order to do that. So the best way to keep these things in service, as we said in one of our other videos, is to maintain them well. Don't leave them outside, oil them, those kinds of things. Cutting through wood day after day, particularly thicker style wood, is going to create a burr on the blade itself, and I'll show you how to eliminate that burr. So these are some of the types of tools that are used for sharpening pruners. You can do everything from a set of jeweler's files. You want to make sure that you're using a round file as opposed to a flat file. That happens to be a set that only costs you a few dollars at a hardware store. You can actually use a very fine tooth chainsaw file. There is a carbide file that Corona and some other manufacturers provide, and there are sharpening stones similar to this, and then my personal favorite happens to be a diamond impregnated rod for sharpening. Basically, when you're sharpening a pair of pruning shears, you first want to start with the front side of the blade. And as I said, I like these diamond sharpeners just because they're very easy to follow the contour of the actual blade edge itself. And it's more of a upward stroke and pushing the file at the same time and following that same angle that's been pre-sharpened into the blade. And over time, what you'll see, particularly with these old rusty pruners, is that this edge here will start to look silver. We're actually taking off enough material to get it back to where it needs to be in order to give you a nice clean cut. Now, in the process of doing this, I've overdone it here. On these particular ones, it's only for demonstration purposes. Probably won't have to file it that much, but you will get a burr on the back side of the actual pruner itself. Now, this particular file, if you hold it nice and flat, you can actually remove the burr by stroking the back of this particular blade. What you can also use is a flat stone, something along the line of this nature, and you can literally take the burr off by you can actually see the material that's coming off the back of the blade here. And it's actually starting, you can actually see I'm taking off any rust just by laying this flat and running it along the blade like that. So right now it is absolutely razor sharp, and that's what you want for pruning. So one of the other important blades that you actually sharpen, which is the non-sharp blade, is called a counterblade. It's this piece of the pruner itself here. It also is in other types of pruners as well. That's a counterblade. So that needs to be sharpened and deburred as well. The thing I like to do is, this happens to be a diamond sharpening rod made by Smith's. It's really awesome because you can get into really tight places. But basically what you want to do for starters is just follow that same counter blade angle. And you only have to do it a few times. It's not a lot. And you'll actually start to see over time that this particular edge right here will actually look silver because you will have taken away all the rust. Now, as I said before, in sharpening, you're going to get a burr on the back side of either the main cutting blade or the counter blade. So what you want to do with any kind of file that we've talked about, including these flat stones. Flat stones are actually quite nice for this particular operation because you can run them completely flat and not slip with, let's say, a round file. But hopefully you can see that you're really starting to get a shiny edge right here. And this also helps too with removing any rust that may have accumulated in there. So several passes, you can actually see in the file that I am taking off some rust, and at that point I've taken off the burr, and you can actually feel that this counter blade, although not sharp, it does have a nice angle to it, and you can actually feel it. You can feel the difference before and after. So there you pretty much have it in terms of how to sharpen a pair of pruners. It's not a difficult task. I think the thing that you have to be most aware of is when you're filing any blade, you have to follow the exact angle which it came out of the factory. If you take your sharpening rod or stone and come in at a different angle, you're going to change the cutting characteristics altogether or completely ruin your pair of pruners. So it's better to sharpen high than it is to sharpen too low like this, but ultimately you're just trying to follow that nice contour of the blade at the same angle out of the factory. And the same is true with a counter blade as well. So that's pretty much it from the Gardening Products Review on how to sharpen a pair of pruners.